Hello, everyone. Today I'd like to go over a couple of my games from a tournament that I played on Sunday. It was a rapid tournament in the town of Livingston in Scotland. And yeah, fortunately, the tournament did go quite well. I managed to come first equal. It was looking like it could possibly be a bit better than that at one point because I started the tournament with 4 out of 4. But in the last round, I lost to a FIDE master who was only on 3 out of 4 at that point, and he managed to get up to 4 out of 5, as did somebody else. So I had to share the tournament win with them, which was not so ideal, of course, but uh, what can you do? I should have not lost in the last round if I wanted to avoid that. Unfortunately, that was quite a bad game, which of course I can't show if there's enough time for it, but I would like to go over the 2 games I had with White because I think they were really quite interesting, and hopefully I should be able to dispense some interesting, some useful wisdom on the Caro-Kann opening and how to fight against it as White. Certainly, the way I chosen was quite effective in this tournament in particular. So yeah, as you can see here, there's a summary of the performance that I had. Managed to perform at 2151 and gain about 22 rating points. To be honest, the FIDE Rapid rating is not really something that I care about too much, but it's nice to get these gains anyway. So yeah, so let's now get into some of the games. So this game was played in the second round. I had black in the first round that I managed to beat my opponent. It was a close Sicilian, just like in the last round as well, actually, against the FM. But in this round, I had white, and I started with e4, and he played c6, of course, so the Caro-Kann. Now, I happen to have a very good score against the Caro-Kann. I think I maybe studied more than some of my fellow 1e4 players because I just it somehow offends my being, this opening, because it is like it's perfectly sound, but um, just the idea of putting a pawn on c6, blocking this knight's development, is like I said, it's just offensive to me, and I could never possibly consider playing this way with black myself, and hence I try to punish it as much as possible when I have white. And maybe I have some extra motivation to try and crush this opening. And well, you'll see my weapon of choice for achieving that outcome momentarily. So, of course, we play d4 because the Caro-Kann player has neglected the fight for the center on the first move by placing their pawn on the evidently stupid square of c6. So let's play d4. And of course, this is the idea that they have to play d5. And okay, here, white has a few options. Knight c3 or knight d2, pretty much the same thing, invite this capture. E takes d5, of course, is perfectly playable. F3 is playable as well. But the most, I think probably the most aggressive option is to play e5. So what we're doing here is we're closing the center, and we're gaining space. We're taking away this square from the knight in f6, which is a very important consideration as well. So black has a couple of moves here, and one of them is c5. And I'm like, okay, well, you could have put the pawn on c5 on your first move, couldn't you? And that might have been a bit better, but anyway, that's beside the point. We'll cover that in a different video. But here my opponent played the move bishop f5, which is the main move for black, developing his bishop outside the pawn chain, which they aim to close in the near future by playing e6. However, after my move h4, the Tal variation, the move e6 is not possible because I will play g4, and I would go on to trap this bishop. As you can see, it's completely run out of squares after bishop b4, f3, bishop g6, and h5. White wins a piece and should win the game. So therefore, black can decide between the moves h6 and h5. Usually there are some alternatives as well, which are not so critical. White should be a bit better against anything else quite comfortably. So h6, interesting, but after g4, white gains a lot of space. And so that's why, in general, you'll see h5 in Grandmaster games these days, which prevents this move g4. So now that we can't really harass this bishop anymore, we play the move bishop d3. And just to exchange this bishop and to accelerate white's development, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. All of this has been played many times before. e6 and bishop e5, which attacks this queen. And here, again, there are a few moves for black. You can play queen b6, queen f5 check, or what my opponent played, bishop e7, which is, I think, not such a great move. Maybe it's perfectly playable. It's just a little bit passive. After the move knight f3, it's not such a great idea for black to take on g5, because we'll take back with the h pawn and activate this rook. So this sort of tension now is not really in black's favor so much. So black played knight h6, and here I went for an idea which I've played in numerous games before, which is to take on h6, which either damages black's pawn structure or causes them to misplace the rook. And this misplacing of the rook after rook takes h6 is quite important, because it means black can't castle very easily. A lot of times black will try to castle queenside, but it's not so obvious how to really get the king to permanent safety. And okay, so because of this fact, I want to try and open the position, and hence I played the move c4. Computers don't want to do this so quickly. They want to maybe have the option of giving the pawn on c3, so they like to play knight d2 a lot of the time, and meet c5 with c3, which also is very playable. It's really a stylistic thing, I would say. So I played c4, and the best reaction here for black is, it doesn't seem to be very well known by Caro-Kann players. What you have to do here to get to stand a chance of equalizing is to take on c4 and play rook g6, with the idea of rook g4 next. So for example, g3, rook g4, and here black has enough counterplay because the move c5 is threatened when white can't take back with the c pawn, with the d pawn rather, because the queen would be hanging on c4. So, and there's a correspondence game in this line as well, where it was basically just equal, and yeah, black went on to draw that, as many games are in correspondence chess. So, but my opponent played the wrong move order. He played rook g6 first, and yeah, now he's in a bit of trouble, because after c takes d5, there's no particularly convenient way to capture this. Now, he took with the queen. Let's discuss the alternatives. He could take with the c-pawn, but now he has not so much counterplay against the center. So yeah, there's no option to play c5 later and try to undermine the structure. This is going to be very solid formation for white, so white should definitely have an advantage here. For example, g3 to defend this pawn. And again, this maneuver with rook g4 is possible, but now it's a lot less effective without this c5 plan available. So knight c3, and white should be a bit better, as we said. E takes d5 is also possible in that position. But here white can actually just sacrifice the pawn on g2 with and obtain a great position. For example, knight c3, it's really not that advisable for black to go in here. He's not well developed enough to undertake such a procedure. E6 will just completely blow open the position. For example, f takes e6, king f1, and black is just going to be losing this exchange, because after rook g4 we have knight e5. If rook f4, then queen g6, and king f8, queen h7, and it's very close to mate already. Knight g6 is also threatened. So yeah, this is really not particularly playable. Black can do a little bit better than rook takes g2, but otherwise, what is your rook really doing on g6 if you can't take the g pawn? So yeah, queen d7, for example. But again, plenty of good options for white here. White's simply a bit better with this extra development. So he took with the queen, and I played the obvious move, knight c3, and here was what he was relying on, bishop b4. But it just doesn't really work at this point. I just castled, I defended both the g2 pawn and brought into being the threat of taking the queen again. So he played queen d8, which, yeah, which is fine, I suppose. He wants to keep the d7 square available for the knight to go to d7, but also, queen d8 now is getting in the way of his king, so it's again a couple of moves before he can castle and get to any safety. And in that time, I'm going to hope to drum up enough threats to overwhelm black's position. So I played knight g5. Now I realized here I'd have this threat of playing queen f3, which would attack f7 and h5. And he, in fact, made this threat even stronger. He played c5, and I played queen f3, and now I'm also attacking the b7 pawn. So yeah, this is really not such a great situation for black already. You can see already on the 15th move, his position has deteriorated substantially to the point of being completely lost. There's simply no way he can deal with this level of development. Yeah, hope to survive here. Queen e7, at least this defends f7 and b7. Now I could consider taking on h5 here, but I thought after rook h6, yeah, it's not so clear. He gets some play with like c takes d4, and maybe knight c6 next if I take. So yeah, I was not so convinced by this. So I decided to play d5, and now if he takes on d5, I'll simply take back with the knight. And yeah, my knight's just looking tremendous here, completely crushing his whole position. Queen takes e5 is not possible because f7 would be hanging. I wouldn't have rook e1, which would be quite a standard tactic, but I would have queen f7, and that's lights out. So he didn't go for that. He took on c3 instead. But here I inserted the move d6, and now I've got this protected passed pawn already on move 17. It's really restricting his possession quite a lot. And so he has to play queen d7. He has to keep an eye on this pawn. So yes, and now I simply took back the pawn. I took back with the pawn because I thought that after knight c6, which was what he played, now this pawn nicely controls his knight, so it can't get into the game very easily. It is attacking the e-pawn, so I simply defended that with rook e1. And now here he should have simply accepted that he's not doing very well here and castled and given up the h5 pawn, but yeah, it wasn't very easy to do this, I imagine. Just not a very pleasant position in general. And so he played king f8, but sadly this makes the situation even worse. I took on h5, and now I'm threatening to play queen h8 mate, which only left the move rook h8, but now I have a nice way to conclude the game. If you'd like to pause the video, you can try and find this move. The move is knight to h7 check, but the real point is on the next move, because either he only has 3 legal moves here, king e8 or king g8, or taking on h7, but obviously I'll be up the exchange and a pawn, so I'll still be threatening mate, so that would be pretty tremendous for me. But after either king e8 or king g8, as he played, I can play queen takes h6, exploiting the fact that this pawn is overloaded, defending the rook and also the check on f6. So this is game over and simply winning a rook. G takes h6 would be met by knight f6 check and king g7, knight takes d7. And yeah, it's not, the knight will get out quite easily. It's got c5 or f6. So he took on e5 instead, but this doesn't really affect the tactic in any way whatsoever, so I just took back because I still have it, and he took on d6, but after rook g5, checkmate is threatened. If g6, then I have knight f6 checkmate, and otherwise queen g7 is coming, so after rook g5, he decided to resign the game, and yeah, I moved to 2 out of 2 in the tournament. So I also won my next game with black, and in the 4th round I was playing an opponent I have a sort of great amount of respect for because of his resourcefulness and determination in very tough positions. I've seen him get out of some very difficult situations, and I even saw him do that in the 3rd round. Or maybe it was the 2nd round, actually. I think it was the 2nd round, yes. So his opponent had sacrificed a piece, and it looked like a completely crushing attack. He just kept on finding these only moves to stay in the game, and eventually turned the tables and won. However, I thought I should have decent chances to be able to sort of target his opening, because I knew he played the Caro-Kann, so I thought I like playing against that, so I'll see what I can do. And yeah, this is how the game went. So we got the same position. I played h4, h5, so it was the same game up until move 7. which is, I guess, quite nice when you get the same game twice, because maybe you've looked at a couple of the ideas in the break between the rounds. That wasn't the case on this occasion. I hadn't had the time to check any other alternatives, so I was just relying on my knowledge here. He played queen b6, and this attacks the pawn on b2, but we don't care. Knight d2. We're just going to give this up and play for compensation on the b file, or in some other lines we can even bring this rook to d1 and play to try and open up the position and attack the black king that way. And so here he played knight h6, which is trying to get this knight to f5 very quickly. I'm not super convinced by this particular move order. I played knight e2 because in some lines I want to meet the move knight f5 and knight g3. I can't do that immediately because d4 would be attacked, but so I can't play knight g3 here because he could just take on d4. So instead I simply decided to castle here. And later I might play knight f3 and then knight g3 if I want to challenge this knight. And here he played the move queen a6, which I think is sort of getting the two ideas kind of muddled a little bit, because queen a6 I think is stronger when white hasn't already castled, because it can provide some pressure along that down to f1 and stop white from castling so easily. Here, if I got this position again, I would play c4. It's the top engine move with a very interesting idea of c5 b4, just completely going all out to try and open the position as fast as possible. But yeah, I didn't play that on this occasion. I played queen f3, which is the second best move. Not quite so good as c4 and b4 though. It's c4 with the idea of b4 on the next move against c5. So I played queen f3. It's a slightly awkward now that the queen is sort of stuck defending this knight. The knight can't really move because the d pawn is hanging otherwise, and the queen can't really move because it's tied to the knight. So black has kind of a window of opportunity to create some counterplay here while white's pieces are a little awkward. And he did that by playing the move c5. However, I was in, I don't know, trying to play quite combatively. So I played c4, which is quite a standard response to c5 by black to ensure that the position opens in some way. Now here he made a mistake. I think he should have played knight c6, and after c takes d5, for example, he can take with the knight and attack my queen. So he gets to trade off these knights, which is quite nice for him, I think. And it's a strong knight on d4 that's not so easy to challenge. If he had taken on c4, then I was actually planning to take on c4 the knight. I thought this worked because he cannot take on c4 because I take on b7 and I attack the rook on a8, and I also threaten queen c8, which would be checkmate. So that wouldn't be playable for him. However, the computer says that here he can actually play knight c6, and it's not so bad. So again, yeah, maybe got a little bit lucky there, but that's fine. So instead he took on d4. Of course, I took on d5 to ensure the opening of the position. And it's quite nice that he can't really take on d5 because I take on f5. It looks like he can maybe take on e2, but of course there's queen c8 mate again, thanks to this beautiful bishop. And so instead he tried to develop, but the problem is with the pawn on d5 now he doesn't have this option of knight c6, which would have been a lot more a lot better, which is a much better square for the knight. So he has to play knight d7 to get this knight out, which is, yeah, it's not so great. So here he's attacking e5 pawn. And I decided to play the very calm move, rook fe1, ignoring this threat basically, because if knight takes e5, I can play queen e4, and I attack the knights, and I've got various ideas, like if this knight moves, I could play knight f4 with the threat of taking on e6 as well, and also the threat of queen takes f5, exploiting the pin on the e file. So this wouldn't be playable for black. So after rook fe1, he played bishop b4, pinning the d2 knight to the rook on e1. But yeah, this is the bishop on b4 is sort of feels a little bit loose. It's a little disconnected from the rest of what he's doing. And I thought, well, maybe there are even some situations where I can just let him take my rook and try and play for this check on d6. Now I can't do that just now because there's this knight on f5, but so that's why I decided to, at this moment, play the move knight g3, which attacks his f5 knight and causes him to exchange it off. And even though sometimes you might think that exchanging off pieces is not so great for an attack because it's it reduces the amount of material you have to work with. Knight f5 is a very good piece, and my knight 22 at that exact moment wasn't really contributing to the attack. It could do at some later point, but I think it's a good opportunity to actually exchange it off and try to make use of the opportunities that I was talking about. So after this, he took on g3. I took with the pawn, which apparently is a slight mistake. I thought this was quite nice because maybe I can later get some counterplay with bring the rook back to f1. Although this doesn't really connect well with what I've been doing so far, because I've moved the rook to e1 and then I've opened the f file. So it doesn't really make so much sense to do it that way, because I have to move my rook back and waste some time. So I should have taken with the queen, and yeah, so this works quite well to discourage him from castling, because I would have bishop h6, very standard tactic. And if, for example, e takes d5, I can start to consider things like e6 at some moments, with trying to open his king even further. But I took with the f pawn. This is quite a common idea, but as I said, maybe not the most accurate in this precise position. And the reason is he can actually get away with castling here, which is in some ways quite surprising, because the h5 pawn is hanging. But after e takes d5, it's not so clear that I'm even better here, because the d pawn could matter at some points. This is a nice pin he's got to eliminate this knight, move my bishop back from the action. So yeah, and there's no immediate attack. There's no breaking through on f7 in the near future. So black would basically be okay here. So okay, f takes g3, and he played rook c8, not castles. Remember, this is a rapid game, so it's you can't see everything. You can't see every detail. Rook rook c8, but this seemed to me a rather sort of artificial move, because it doesn't really, it does activate the rook, but it's it doesn't it somehow doesn't really do a lot, and I started to feel quite confident here. So I took on e6. I thought, I had a mistaken thought here that after the move knight e4, now of course you cannot take on e1, because I play knight d6, and it's going to be mate or loss of the queen. So instead he could take on e5, counterattacking the queen. And I thought that after knight f6 check, g takes f6, queen takes f6, he had the move knight g6, but it's actually completely winning for white, because I can simply take on e6, and if castles, I have a very nice finishing move, just bishop h6, getting in on the dark squares and winning the game. If instead of I take on f7, well, this doesn't actually quite work, because the queen is then opened up to defend the knight, and he can simply take on f7, and I'm down a piece for nothing. So that was quite a funny line. Like I said, you can't see everything in Rapid, so there you go. So knight d4 was in fact was possible, but actually it would give him enough time to get out of the way, because he could castle here, and yeah, now things are hanging. The e5 pawn is hanging, the e1 rook is hanging. So this would actually not be so great for white. So I played the right move, but not quite for the correct reason. So instead, I took on e6, and here he has to play quite an unnatural move. At least it looked to me anyway. He has to take on e6 with the queen, because after something like queen b7, he has rook b8 and queen e4, and castles. And again, not I'm up a pawn, but it's not such a great pawn to be up. The pawn on g3, my king is actually maybe a little more unsafe than his in this position, and he's actually got quite an annoying pin here, with maybe the threat of bishop d2 and rook b2 coming up very shortly. So again, this would be okay for black. But yeah, queen takes d6, I think not very natural. So the point of this whole operation is that after f takes e6, I can now play the move knight e4, because again, bishop e1 is not possible. I play knight d6, I won the queen, because of checkmate. Otherwise, and I've got this idea of knight f6, and now of course there is no possibility to castle, because the queen is cutting through that square. He also can't move this rook to f8, for example, because h5 would hang with check. So he decided to play rook c6. I think he already had like only a minute or so left. It was really hard for him to play with that level of time, but I knew that he was extremely proficient at finding moves on this, even with very low time. So I didn't. I tried to not let his time sort of disturb my own focus, and I tried to just keep on putting him under pressure. And you don't need to worry about that time so much, right? Because that'll take care of itself. If you just keep on playing the best moves, then they're going to struggle to defend anyway. So you don't really need to adjust what you're doing so much, I find, in those situations. Of course, you're going to be on both sides of that scenario, and I think if you don't have so much time yourself, you just have to keep on finding what you can, calculating what you can, and try to make moves that don't lose immediately, and yeah, that's all you can do, and just hope that your opponent doesn't put you away. So after rook c6, I played rook f1. This simply threatens mate on f7, and also nicely gets out the way of the bishop, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. And yeah, basically he only has one move here. It's knight takes e5 to try to defend. And here, sadly, I missed the best move here, which was the immediate knight f6. For some reason, I'm not entirely sure why. Actually, I played queen f4 first, which attacks the knights, and he played queen b5 to defend it. But after this, I again I managed to spot this possibility on the second time of asking, and after knight f6, g takes f6, queen takes f6. I'm attacking the rook on h8 and also threatening queen d8 checkmate, and there's no satisfactory way to defend against both of these crushing threats, so he resigned. Actually, he lost some time trying to find a move, and yeah, I moved to 4 out of 4. As we saw, I sadly didn't complete the perfect tournament by losing to the FIDE Master in the last round. But yeah, these things happen. If you'd like to see that game, it's obviously a very painful, pretty painful experience. I just didn't play very well. You can please comment that down below, and maybe you'll get to see it. You never know. So yeah, these two Caro-Kann games were just completely crushing victories. One of them in 24 moves, one of them in 22 moves. Yeah, just complete annihilation. Although in this second game, I didn't even play that accurately. I gave my opponent some chances to get back into the game, but I think you could see that the kind of moves he had to find were a lot more difficult than the ones that I had to find. So that's just what happens when you play this kind of opening, and that's in general the philosophy. You're just putting them under a lot of pressure from the first move and trying to crush them straight away, which is how I like to play chess. So thank you for watching this. I hope you got some kind of value from the analysis and the moves. I hope to make many more videos on the Tal variation in the future. And goodbye for now.